Ever since my book came out, Kitchen Garden Revival, people have been asking me, Nicole, how do you grow tomatoes on an arch trellis? Have you seen the cover? It's super fun. So in today's lesson, I'm going to teach you the steps to create your own tomato arch trellis this season. Let's get started. Hi, I am Nicole Burke, the owner and founder of Gardenary Incorporated. Garden plus ordinary equals Gardenary, and it's our mission to make the garden an ordinary part of everybody's life once again. So whether you're a beginner gardener and you're just overwhelmed by all the possibilities, or you're an experienced gardener who's interested in teaching and coaching others in the garden coach industry, Gardenary is the place for you. So be sure you subscribe to the Gardenary channel, hit that little bell so that you're notified every time we publish a new video, and stay tuned for inspiring garden content all season long. Now let's dive into today's lesson all about growing tomatoes on an arch trellis. Let's do it. All right, let's talk about the few supplies that you need to get started growing your tomato plants up an arch trellis this season. So the very first thing I recommend is a raised bed of some sort. So if you want to have a full-on raised bed kitchen garden, I highly recommend that. You can learn how to do this entire setup inside my Kitchen Garden Academy. We have more links to that down below this video. So I highly recommend growing at least in some kind of raised structure. You can do a raised bed like this, but I've even had followers and people in my audience who've used pots, so deep, wide pots. I would recommend them be at least 2 feet deep and 2 feet wide so that your tomatoes have plenty of space to grow. It's really hard to grow tomatoes directly in the ground because they have so much nutritional and space needs. So my recommendation is grow in a raised bed or a really big container. Then obviously you're going to need a super great soil blend. I highly recommend my 103 mix, which you can find inside my book, Kitchen Garden Revival. So use a great organic soil blend. Don't use any of that Miracle Grow or synthetic stuff. We're going to grow these tomatoes naturally. So after you've got a raised bed or container and some great soil, you obviously need a trellis. Now there's all kinds of ways you can create an arch trellis. You could create an arch trellis. The cheapest way is by buying a big, what is it called? It's like fencing, cattle fencing, from a place like Tractor Supply or a farm supply store. If you're going to buy cattle, it's like a cattle panel is what it's called. You want to make sure you're buying one that's super strong. So I made the mistake when I first started trying to do arch trellises of buying a roll of cattle panel from like Home Depot or Lowe's, and those trellises just completely collapsed under the weight of all my tomatoes and plants that I was growing over them. So you want to order a very strong cattle panel that really comes as one big long sheet. You're going to buy that, and then you're going to attach it on one side of a bed to the other side. That's probably the least expensive, but it's also the most work because it's a lot to get this huge panel over to your house and then to work with it to turn it into an arch. So cheapest way, but also the most taxing in terms of time and frustration, at least in my own experience. The next way you can set up an arch trellis is by getting a kit. So we have lots of great arch trellis kits in my shop, and I'll link to those below this video. These kits will come to you in a box, and then you put them together with some screws. Generally, you rarely have to use tools. We use a lot of these kits for my clients with Rooted Garden, and we've been shipping them all over the country this spring. So that's another way to do it, is to just buy an online kit and then put it together for your raised bed to connect your two containers. Finally, you could have a custom-made trellis where it's just all one piece. I'll tell you the story of my trellis in another video, but that's the situation for mine. So many people ask, where do I get your exact trellis? So it's custom made, and it's a long story, but I'll tell you another time. So those are really the three options. You can make one with a cattle panel. It's cheapest option, but the hardest to do. The second is to get a kit. I would say that's probably midway in terms of expense and pretty easy to put together. And then the third way is to have a custom made trellis. I would recommend doing that if you're going formal with your kitchen garden and you really want to upscale your space. So those are the three ways to set up your arch trellis. The final thing you need in terms of supplies is, a tomato plant. So there's two kinds of tomato plants. There's determinate tomato plants and indeterminate. Determinate plants are bush tomatoes or patio tomatoes. They're going to grow only to about 5 or 6 feet tall, maybe even 4 or 5 feet tall, produce all at once and be finished growing. That's not the kind of tomato plant we want to plant on our arch trellis. We want to plant this kind. This is called an indeterminate. It's a vining tomato that will literally grow and grow and grow and grow and never stop until the temperatures don't work anymore. Either it's too hot or it's too cold. So this particular tomato is called a black cherry. It's a vining tomato, and I grew this on my trellis last year and it was so amazing. So I've got sun golds and Juliets on this too, cherry and grape tomato plants. And you can do large tomato plants or small. I love doing the cherry and grape varieties because I get a ton of beautiful fruit on them and they just produce more and more. And I'm not super big on like canning and paste tomatoes and all that kind of stuff. So if you're into that, you could grow those types, but for me, I just love the small ones. All right, so those are the main things you need to get started. You need a raised bed or a container, great soil, some kind of arch trellis, and then vining tomato plants. Now that we know what we need, let's get started planting them. All right, now that we know what we're going to be putting together, it's time to plant our tomatoes on our arch trellis. So what I recommend is doing 2 tomatoes per side per arch trellis. So in this case, I have an arch that's about 12 to 15 inches wide. So I have 2 tomato plants planted on this one on this end of the arch and one on this end of the arch. Then I have the exact same situation and setup on that side. So what's going to happen is this plant here, I believe this one is sun gold. So this one will grow at about the same rate as this one over here. So it's going to be this nice symmetry. Now you could grow less if you wanted to. You guys know I love intensive planting, but I do know some who feel overwhelmed to put 2 tomato plants this close together because it breaks the rules. So if that's what you want to do to be safe and sound, no worries. So I could have just planted 1 tomato plant right here in the center of the arch trellis and grow it singularly up and over the arch. I hear from others of you that want to plant 4 tomato plants on one side. So you could do that. You could plant 1 tomato here and here, and then come across about 1 foot on the inside of the trellis and plant 1 here and here. And then pull them all together onto the arch with twine and tie them on. The challenge you're gonna have if you plant 4 is that up in here, as those plants really start to vine and fruit, you're gonna have a ton of vegetation that you have to deal with every single week. Remember, we're growing in containers with great soil, so these plants are gonna be growing like crazy over the next few weeks. So if you're committed to coming out pruning a ton and making sure it doesn't turn into a big tangled mess, you can go for 4, but my recommendation is just 2 for every trellis. Now I could have gone trellis crazy here, and I could have had a trellis here and here. I could have had 3 trellises just in this one bed. In that case, I would have had 6 tomato plants on each side. So I'd have a total of 12 tomato plants, 2 per trellis. So you can make this as small or as big as you want to. The fun is really just watching this magic happen, climbing up the trellis and growing over the top. So that's how you're going to set up your tomatoes. You want to have, basically my recommendation is 2 per trellis, 2 per side per arch trellis, which means 4 total for every arch that you have. All right, now we're going to move on to tending these beautiful little tomatoes. Okay, now that we have our tomatoes planted and growing, it is time to tend to them. So I've got some, I don't know what these are called, kitchen scissors. I use them for salad, and I'm gonna be pruning with these today. So you wanna make sure anytime that you've got scissors or pruners that they're nice and clean. So wipe them down with some rubbing alcohol because you don't wanna be spreading disease, especially with tomatoes. So clean pruners to start. Now, I'm gonna tell you what to do, but don't look at what I did because I kinda broke my own rule. But the main goal when you're starting your tomato plant is to prune to 1 main stem. You'll see here that I've already got a second main stem, and I have not pruned it off because it's already got little flower buds started. So it just breaks my heart to get rid of this. But in general, you only wanna have 1 main stem. So let me show you this one. It's a little crowded in here, as you know, but this is the main stem that I want to be caring for. So I'm going to be focusing only on this main stem, and you really just want to have 1 main stem of growth until you hit the first set of flowers. So each week as this plant starts to grow, I would come in and cut off something like this. I didn't catch this one early enough, so I'm just gonna let it go and I'll attach it to the trellis. But in general, you'd wanna just have one main stem. Now up here, as the plant starts to grow, I'm gonna come in every single week and tend to the plant. So I'm gonna make sure that this plant has enough nutrients. I might add a little bit of extra compost around the base of the plant every single week. Or I might add something like some composted chicken manure or some earthworm castings. Tomato plants are super hungry. They love to eat tons of nutrients to keep producing. So you want to make sure at least once a week you're watering these deeply and you're giving them a little bit of extra food. Again, you can do this as simply as adding a little bit of compost. Then I'm going to come in and I am going to cut. So my goal is to have less green and more flowers and fruit. So what I come in and cut as I go along, and what I've found over the years, I used to prune the suckers of the plant. So a sucker is this extra little vine that starts. You can see it right here. It's a vine that I like to say it grows up the elbow of the tomato plant. So a lot of people, the study is to cut the suckers, but do you know what I found? The suckers are the ones, at least in my own experience, that produce the most fruit. So now what I do, instead of pruning the suckers, is I actually prune the L. So I wouldn't prune these because these are higher up on the vine, but down here I would prune the L's. So when I come to a spot in the tomato plant, as you can tell, I got a lot going on here. So I got my peas. So my peas will be coming out soon. They won't be so crazy, but do you see this? This is the sucker. So I'm gonna let this sucker stay because you can see I'm already starting to get fruit here. So that's a good one. And then I'm just gonna cut this, which is the L. So the L is not gonna be producing any fruit. You can tell it's just a leaf. And then I leave my sucker so that I can get some fruit off of it. So suckers aren't really suckers anymore. They're like saviors. So anyway, that's just my tip. Not everybody's gonna say that that's what you should do, but that's the way I've worked it, and I end up getting so much fruit when I stopped pruning my suckers. All right, last thing you're gonna do to tend to your tomatoes every single week when you deeply water and you prune away at the base is you're just gonna take a little bit of twine. You don't wanna tie too tightly, and you're just gonna help your tomatoes stay on the trellis. So I'll continue to leave the tomato to grow. You don't want to be pruning at all from the top of the plant. That will stunt the growth and pause it. So what we want to be doing is encouraging this growth to happen. So like you saw, I just tied a little bow instead of a knot. That way I can come in and easily adjust it. And it doesn't really need something super strong, just something to keep it nice and attached to the trellis. So I'll do that for all these vines so that in case there's a heavy rain, a big windstorm, a tornado, a typhoon, a hurricane, anything crazy that happens, my tomatoes are gonna stay put and stay attached to the trellis. So those are the main things you gotta do to keep your tomato vining up this trellis. And my estimation is that by the middle of July, it's the middle of June right now, these tomatoes are gonna be at the top of the trellis. Stay tuned and you'll see if that happens. All right, so that wraps up our video on how to grow tomatoes on an arch trellis. I hope that you will go for this season. It is not too late to plant your tomatoes. Most tomatoes, if bought from a great local nursery, will be vining and fruiting for you in less than 65 days. So it's absolutely not too late to start your own tomatoes, and I hope you will go for it. If you've got questions, be sure to put them in the comments below. And if you love learning about kitchen gardening from me, you've got to watch my free class on the 5 lessons I learned from gardening in 5 different climates and helping over 200 clients set up their own kitchen garden. You can find a link to that free class right here below this video. Sign up and watch it today, and you're gonna be growing so much more than tomatoes in the days to come. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you next time.